Hello, my name is Cybertoast. Today we're going to be reading on r/nosleep. But first, I want to tell my own personal story that still freaks me out to think about to this day. I live in South Jersey, and there's a part of woods called Mananico. It has a few blue holes, which are man-made lakes. They're beautiful sometimes to go to. Well, this place had a dirt trail that led right down the middle of it that had branching off trails that I like to drive down in my old truck. One weekend, I grabbed a lot of my friends together and we decided to go down the normal dirt trail. It wasn't any legal trail to take, so it was a lot of fun just to rip around at 60. Well, I had about 6 friends with me in the truck, and we're going down the trail. We're all laughing. We get down to the end of it a couple times and we keep on going back and forth, just having fun, kid stuff. A couple of my friends hung out the windows, my other friend out the top of the sunroof. As we went along, one pass felt a little weird when I headed back down towards the end of the trail. I was going about 40 when all of a sudden I saw what looked like a black object in the road running across, but it stopped, and then it looked like a raccoon, but it was all black. I remember my friend next to me in the passenger seat scream when we hit it. I could feel the bones crunch under the wheel as we went over it. All of my friends went quiet, so we stopped the car and went to look for what I had hit. We had a weird smell in the air, yet when we went back to look, there was nothing there. Not even a mark on where we had hit the thing. And there was no animals around, nothing in the woods made a sound at all. We looked around for a couple minutes and didn't see anything. So, we blew it off like it was nothing and continued to have fun. We went down a trail, and then I got my car stuck in a sand pit. The wheel started spinning and dug down into the dirt. And then we called for help. But when we called for help, we had a weird smell of death, as if something was burning under the car. So, we started to look around. We looked under the car to see if the animal had been stuck underneath the whole time, but there was nothing. Nothing was making the smell. After a couple minutes, it had gone away. About a week later, it was just me and one of my friends from that night. His name is Dev. Well, we decided that we wanted to take another trail that we had normally taken, that I like to go running down at about 50 miles an hour. Well, we decided that we wanted to mark out a new spot that would give us a better run and maybe even find something that went around one of our favorite blue holes. Everything was fine on this day. The trail felt normal, the car felt great, and then we passed by our blue hole that we normally stopped at. And then something felt odd, but I couldn't really put my finger on it. Me and my friend Dev kept on laughing and making jokes as we kept going. Soon, we hit a old train track, and I went to start turning around so that way we could head back. But as we passed by an old tree, we heard what sounded like a nail get dragged across the side of the truck. We could feel it. I could hear the paint get chipped as it went. But when I looked in the rear view, it looked like that same thing that I had hit the other day. Me and him both saw it, a small black figure standing by the tree. But suddenly, it went from being a small black figure to a tall black figure that I couldn't see through. It had no features, but I could see that it started walking towards the car. I remember my friend Dev yelling, "Go!" So I pushed it. I remember hearing the engine roar and the tires skidding out from underneath in the dirt. I remember the moment that the car got traction, I looked in the rearview mirror, and that's when I had almost a heart attack. The black figure was running at the truck. My friend kept watching in shock, so I booked it as fast as possible, hitting 65 through these small corners, jumping around corners in this truck, looking into the woods, seeing it chasing through the woods, running through trees. We both were so scared. My friend kept on looking back, telling me where it was, but he always kept on saying that it was running towards the car. I don't know what the heck it was, but by the time we got out into the street, I didn't look back, and I kept driving home. To this day, me and my friend Deb think that we got chased out by the Jersey Devil. And there's nothing that I can do to prove it or disprove it. That is my story. Now we're gonna go to r/nosleep. And this story is called Camping with a Friend and Something Else. No one believes me when I try to tell them what happened last weekend. Not the police, not my friends, not even my parents. The thing we met in those woods followed me home, and I don't know how long I have left before it takes me as well. I have to tell someone what happened during last weekend's camping trip. It was winter break from my community college, and I, along with a few friends, decided we were gonna go camping on a trip. Before we all went home to our families for the extended break, the group consists Kyle, George, and Tony. We all became friends through courses we took together, and I have to say that they made college more exciting. He had big plans for this weekend, since it would be about a month before we saw each other again. We planned on leaving around lunch and heading to the Nantahal National Forest, where we would be camping. It was about an hour drive from where we were, so nothing too crazy. After a few days of scrounging around for supplies, we finally had everything we thought we might need. Then the day finally arrived. We set out around lunch so that way we could have everything set up by mid-afternoon and be able to hike out to a waterfall Kyle said he had been to once before. After around an hour, give or take, we finally arrived at the campground. We had begun to set up the 2 tents we had brought with us. I remember it took longer than we had planned because George and Tony had never been camping before. So it was up to me and Kyle to get everything set up. It was so hard work, but soon enough we had our campsite up and running. "Hey guys," Kyle said with the surplus energy he was always had. "Ready to go see what this place has to offer?" "You don't ever get tired, do you, Kyle?" George let out a sarcastic remark. "It would be worth it, I swear. Just hurry up so we can make it back before dark." With that, we set off around an hour later, with leg muscles threatening to cramp up at every moment. We finally reached the waterfall. It was a sight to see, I won't lie to you. There was 2 large boulders at the top, and the waterfall led down into this almost crystal clear pool, where it slowly trailed down to the base of the mountain. The pool was so clear we could even pick a few fish that had made this place their home. We had brought a few snacks with us so that we sat down and ate for a while. We were finishing up our food when we heard what sounded like a large branch being snapped. It was like a bulldozer trying to make its way down the mountain. Then this animalistic cry that shook my bones It came from past the top of the waterfall, somewhere hidden with the dense foliage. All of us stood up, wide-eyed. We're looking around, trying to find the source of the scene was playing out somewhere within the woods. "I think it's about time that we head back," Tony said, frantically putting on his backpack. Kyle looked over to him. "Guys, where's George?" We were all panicked by this point, trying to find out what had happened to George. He was there 1 second and gone the next. After another 30 minutes of searching and calling out to the never-ending greenery that surrounded us, we tried calling his cell phone, but it wouldn't connect because of the poor service on the mountain. By this point, I had noticed that the sun was going down and it was going to be dark soon. "Let's start heading back, guys." I looked at my two friends that remained. There's a park ranger office not too far from our campsite. We need to tell them what happened so they can help. "We can't leave George out here," Kyle responded. "If we haven't found him yet, we are going to just have an even harder time in the dark. We have to guide us the light from our cell phone." "Cam is right, Kyle," Tony said, defending me calmly. "We will go tell the park ranger and come back with them to keep the search up." "Alright," Kyle relented. "Let's hurry up so we get back and find him." We finally started on our way back down the mountain. The sun was setting, and we knew we wouldn't make it back to the ranger cabin until dark. We walked as fast as we could down the rough trail that had guided us. That's when we heard more branches snapping in the distance. We all froze and stared off for what felt like an eternity. We still don't find whatever caused the disturbance and continued down the mountain. It was probably 5 or 10 minutes before the sun fully set and darkness would take over the mountain when we heard it cry again. This time, though, it seemed much closer. "Stay close, guys. We don't need anyone else getting lost before we get off this trail," I said to the two next to me with a false sense of confidence. "What's following us?" Tony said, and I could hear the fear in his voice. "Do you think whatever it is got George?" "Let's just hurry up, Tony. Right now we need to focus on getting off this mountain," Kyle said while beginning to move once again down the path. "I swear, I am never camping for good after this." Me and Tony both followed suit, close behind him. We walked on pins and needles for the next few minutes with all of our concentration on our surroundings. At this point, we had to retrieve the flashlights Tony had in his bag to see where we were headed because it was now dark on the mountain. That's when we came around a sharp corner in the trail and found ourselves face to face with a tree that was now obstructing our path to safety. It was a dense-sized oak tree. Looked like it had been ripped straight out of the ground with its roots still attached and everything. It also had branches protruding all directions that obstructed our view past it. "Jesus Christ," I muttered. "It looks like there's enough space for us to crawl under," Kyle said while leaning down to check the space from the tree to the ground. "There's no way I'm doing that," Tony said. "That thing is gonna collapse on me as soon as I try to go under." "There's no other way around, Tony," I said while pulling my hand on his shoulder for reassurance. "Me and Kyle will go through first so you can see that it's secure enough." "Alright, let's get moving," Kyle said as he began making his way under the tree. Kyle made it through and gave us an all clear. I looked back at Tony and gave him a thumbs up and went under the tree as well. While I was making my way, I looked at the trunk of the tree and noticed claw marks wrapped around the trunk. This made my hairs on my neck stand. At least I finally made my way, and we both stood waiting for Tony. "Tony, you coming or what?" Kyle called out. There was no response. "Kyle, come on. We gotta hurry up so we can get help," I added to unease the mounting stress. "That's when from far off distance we heard screaming. It was Tony. Whatever was following us down the mountain had placed that tree there and could take my friend. So it could take my friend. The screaming lasted for what felt like an eternity. That was followed by pleas for his life. Please help me. And just like that, the forest returned to its deafening silence. We both ran. I was running, branches flying in my face, narrowly catching myself from falling off due to exposed roots. I wanted nothing more than to reach the bottom of this mountain and to see the light of the ranger's office after that. After what felt like forever, I finally saw light. I was so overjoyed I nearly cried. "Hurry up, Kyle, we're home." There was no sign of him. He was just gone. While running, I wasn't paying attention to anything other than getting off the mountain as soon as possible. I hadn't even noticed that he wasn't behind me. I began walking up to the office in a daze. I had scrapes and bruises, covering nearly every bit of exposed skin on my body. Finally, noticing the park ranger coming out of the cabin, I just stopped and froze. They walked over to me and took me to the porch to explain what had happened. I told them the whole story of the events that had played out, and they decided to call the police to help with the search they were going to try to pull together to find my friends. "Hey, Cam." I looked over, and it was him. George was standing right there. He looked perfectly fine, like nothing had ever happened. "Where did you go, man? We were looking everywhere for you. I thought whatever was out here got you too," I said as I bounded off the porch and gave my now only friend a hug. At this point, I had no clue something was amiss. I was just happy that I wasn't the only one left. When I hugged him, he stayed stiff as a board. He didn't even look bothered at the events that were playing out. I backed off from him and noticed his lips slowly curling into a grin, the smile he made stretching a little farther than it should have at this point, where I had thought his mouth would rip. That's when it hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't George. It was the thing that took him. I screamed and yelled to anyone that would listen that it wasn't my friend, but they all just looked at me like I was crazy. That's when the police showed up and questioned both of us about what had happened. They saw nothing wrong with George's story, even though I kept telling them that it wasn't him. They all just assumed that I was in shock from losing my friends. They cleared us both, and as dawn was breaking the next morning, I was on my way home. I refused to leave with George, so one of the policemen grabbed what little I needed so I could leave as soon as possible. On my way out, I looked to see him standing in the front of my dormitory. George had that same smile stretched across his face. I feel like he's just tormenting me with the knowledge that all my friends are dead and the culprit is standing right in front of me. "Have a safe trip home," it said with a voice that sounded almost human, but carried an animalistic undertone that sent chills up my spine. The search party that went in search of my friends hadn't found anything except for one of Kyle's hiking boots, which was now painted in a crimson color from the fluid that once gave him life. There was no trace of Tony, and I knew that they probably wouldn't find anything. The main reason I'm trying to get this story out there is because last night, while looking out my bedroom window, he was there. George was standing on the edge of the sidewalk with that same god-awful smile. It was standing right at the edge of what the street light illuminated, and it cast an eerie shadow over it and illuminated this thing's eyes that were reflecting in a way that only an animal could. I know I don't have much time left before I become food or whatever that creature is. I managed to lose so much in what was supposed to be a fun weekend with my friends. George is outside again tonight. I know my time is almost up, so let me finish this with a warning. Don't go camping in Natal national forest. Something might follow you home.